John Eustace been announced at Derby County.
Yes.
One of my podcast bets for the season was Derby to get relegated, and they're just not going to get relegated now.
Was that an outright?
Yeah. It's the same last year. I took Sheffield Wednesday and QPR to be relegated, and like neither of them could win a game. And then they got their two managers in, and they're like the best managers in the league.
You've got some decent outrights, Sam.
Yeah, a couple look quite good.
You've got some shockers as well.
Did I take Luton?
You had Luton top 6, mate.
It's their bottom.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
Argyle.
bottom.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, they swapped places with Argyle last night.
Doing well.
They're doing really well. 3 wins in a row at home.
5-1 last night.
5-1.
Hey,
Hello.
Scott. No, I said yesterday, like, Kieran Tierney, fourth choice attacker at this point. Which
Marino up front then. Not like Havertz was clinical, and I do like Havertz, but he's not, a one-man goal machine, is he? It's not.
No, he's not.
Not, but he's like, it's a focal point, isn't it? It's someone to like bounce the ball off. And
That's why I wouldn't be surprised if they chuck Marino up front, because he's the same sort of stature, really good in the air.
what a
know.
sorry state of affairs though when you chuck in. Do you know what I mean? You're after the Premier League title and you chuck in Marino up top in February.
Honestly,
great,
though,
that.
like Saka, Havertz, and Jesus out for the season. Like, what's happened there? Like,
Yeah, no, it is first choice, front three all missing, and then Jesus is probably the second player to come into that. It's the first four attackers all missing at this point, which is
Don't think Arteta helps it though. Like he runs some of these players into the ground.
he does.
Especially with Saka last season.
I don't know, maybe it's summer tournaments catching up with them. Didn't have a summer rest, just straight back and
top
hasn't
players
helped.
just don't get a rest anymore, do they?
What are you gonna do?
What are you going to do? You chuck Marino up top. That's
Chuck-
what you're going to do.
Get Big Mick up top, yeah. Should we start?
Let's go.
It's an unchanged lineup for our panel of betting experts as we look ahead to the weekend action. 3 tipsters, 2 tips each, and as ever, the pod treble. All that and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Football Betting Pod Power Betting Expert. I'm your host, Dan Jenkins, joined as ever by betting experts football editor Sam Ingram. How are you doing, Sam?
Hello, Dan. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Are you still basking in the glory that is Plymouth Argyle right now? Beating Liverpool on the weekend, winning 5-1 last night. It's looking good.
Yeah, who would have saw this coming? 5-1 last night at home park against Millwall. I was saying to a few of my mates, like about 3 weeks ago, they never looked like scoring. And then since then, they've beat Liverpool, scored 5 against Millwall last night. It's a strange one. Just looking at their relegation odds now, they're still 1.18 to be relegated. Come off the bottom of the league last night. Luton's now bottom, which is also strange in itself. Just saying that, I tipped them for top 6. So, bottom of the championship, not ideal. But yeah, weird one at home park. Hopefully it continues. We got Blackburn at the weekend, away at Blackburn. Big game. John Eustace just left the Derby, literally just been announced before we come on this pod.
I mean, you need a couple of teams to get pulled down, don't you? Especially if it looks like Derby going to start pulling away with a new manager. Cardiff are there. Stoke aren't far off. Just need to get those teams to start dropping points, maybe give you a bit of a fighting chance. But
That's the thing, you've got like Hull down there. You'd say their squad's probably not too good to go down, but they got the players to get them out of it. Eustace has just gone to Derby. Cardiff and Stoke, 2 established championship clubs, and Portsmouth have been playing brilliantly the last few games. So that is going to be the most interesting, I was going to say race to be relegated. That's not right, is it? An interesting
it's a battle, mate.
battle.
Battle's
It's the most interesting battle in terms of relegation I think we'll see in England this season. It's going to be, pretty frantic come the end of the season.
Joining us today, once again, Daniele Fitzgerald. How you doing, man?
Hi, LA. All good, thank you.
Good. Back again, Scott Thornton. Tan's looking a little bit less tan at the moment. Few days back in Wales and it's gone, mate.
Yeah, it was never going to last long with this weather. Maybe I'll have to take another break. If the results are as poor as my last pod, everything just seemed to lose by a narrow margin after a great run before holiday. So it's really taking the momentum out of me.
Yeah, taking the shine off. Let's just get straight into it, shall we? Let's get straight into the bets. Big story of the week in midweek. Big game of midweek was Manchester City versus Real Madrid. I know we were We all enjoyed it. I think the game went pretty much as we were hoping it would, as we were expecting it would. As we talked about in the last episode of the pod, nice winning bet for Sam with the over on the goals, and Real Madrid qualifiers looking quite good as well after that 3-2 victory. So ahead of that trip to the Bernabeu next week, City are in action in the Premier League, which is where we kick things off. So Sam, do you want to talk about City versus Newcastle?
Yeah, just what an awkward weekend this is for Manchester City. And they face a really awkward team in Newcastle United. Their strengths are in their midfield, the combative energy in midfield. The question we need to ask, I think, is like, how does Pep approach this? Or what would you do if you were Pep, Dan? Are you resting Haaland, De Bruyne? Ruben Diaz has just come back from injury.
I think the priority for Manchester City is finishing in the top 4 or 5. So I think I'd argue that this is a bigger game.
Okay,
Real Madrid.
Would you play everyone that played against Madrid and take them out of the team?
I would leave.
at the
No,
Bernabeu?
I would leave it all out. Just tell them to not worry about next week's match. Just focus on getting the 3 points here. So play everyone. Not really. No, that's what I do.
Okay, that's not how I see this at all. I don't think.
No?
I think they have to. I think they have to prioritize that Madrid game. Don't know. Maybe I'm miles off, but it's going to be really difficult at the Bernabeu, of course, and the likelihood is that Real Madrid go through. But this is still a Man City team that are capable of turning over a team like that. And in terms of like silverware for the season, it's one of their only remaining hopes. Obviously, they're still in the FA Cup as well, but this is just one game, and I know it's the battle for fourth.
They haven't got much chance in the FA Cup though, have they? Because obviously they've drawn Plymouth next round. So
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but that is true. But yeah, like being like, the landscape of the Champions League tie now as well, they're one go down, so they have to go to Spain and give it absolutely everything. I would just assume that we see a few changes here, because after all, it is only one game in the Premier League, and what they've got, maybe, I don't know how many games they've got left, maybe 15, 16 games left. So I'd imagine we see a few changes, but also for Newcastle, it looks like Dan Burn and Botman are out too. They are two massive blows, and potentially Anthony Gordon as well. And that made the plus 0.5 handicap for Newcastle at evens a little bit off-putting. But if you consider that and then compare it to City's current predicament, Grealish and Akanji went off against Real Madrid. I believe that there has to be a bit of rotation if Pep's to get anything out of that game. Looking at the handicap, yeah, I think Newcastle can get a positive result here, and it might not be a win and it might not be pretty, but the Asian handicap means that a draw returns full profits. So I think I have to take that. And you know what? If Anthony Gordon is out, for example, that Asula played against Birmingham, I thought he was magnificent. I know Birmingham City and Manchester City is a little bit of a step up, granted, but he was really lively. He'll be desperate to get more minutes. And also Callum Wilson is back and scoring. So not all hope is lost if Anthony Gordon is out. And also Joe Willock was back in the team. In terms of his ball carrying and being a nuisance to that potentially laboured City midfield, I think he's a pretty handy alternative to Joelinton, who will also miss the game. So both clubs, their injuries are mounting up, and their fixture schedule is also increasing. But I still like Newcastle to come here and avoid defeat.
Yeah, me too. I mean, City should. You asked me if I was Pep, what would I do? I would prioritise this game because I think it's more important. But I still think Newcastle can cause them a lot of problems. I think the way City's backline has looked in the last few weeks, if I'm Alexander Isak, I'm thinking I can get in behind them, score, get plenty of chances, probably get the score sheet. I think City will have to make changes. I don't think Kevin De Bruyne is in a physical place where he can play more than one game a week at this point. Doesn't really look like it. And as you said, they had a lot of players coming off the pitch, injured, Jack Grealish off again. So, Scott, I'll bring you in here because you've got a bet for this game. How do you see this one going?
I think I think Pep's quite naive. He'll name a strong team of both, but I think he'd probably say the Real Madrid game, they'll go harder. They could get beaten up at Real if they play a very weakened team. So I'd worry about that. I'm fancying goals here, though. As Sam said, those injuries defence for Newcastle, both teams to score in the match looks really, really appealing. the odds are quite short, so I've combined it with over 1 card for Newcastle, and the numbers just look really, really solid. Enjoy to get into the data now with this bet, though.
Get into it, Scott.
Get into it. Well, Betsy's onside, which is always nice. I have gone against Betsy, one of my later bets, but for now, Betsy's got 1.88 goals for City, 1.38 for Newcastle. So both teams to score looking very, very decent there. City kept a clean sheet in their last 5 home matches against Newcastle in the Premier League, which doesn't bode well, but this is a very different City to those seasons. I'm pretty sure actually it was the first weekend of last season when they hosted Newcastle. This was a hell of a long time ago now, and City are just far more open. 1-1 at St James's Park earlier in the season. Newcastle finishing with an XG of 1.57. Do think they'll create chances once again. Isak still in fantastic form, really does help, and City looking vulnerable to those balls over the top against Real, and the same thing should probably happen to a strong runner in behind like Isak. City are still scoring plenty of goals at home despite their struggles this season, scoring in 17 of the 19 games they've played at the Etihad across all competitions. That's an average of 2.53 goals per game. And they will have one eye on Madrid, so I'm expecting some sort of chaos at the back because they inevitably have to make some changes. Isak actually missed the reverse fixture as well, it's worth noting. So Newcastle much more creative with him in the team. These games tend to be quite card friendly. They both picked up 4 cards each in the reverse fixture. Cards are still trending upwards in the Premier League, something I've been harping on about for quite some time. An average of 4.61 cards per Premier League game this season, which would make it a record for the Premier League, the most cards ever in a season, overtaking last season. City matches see the 5th fewest cards, that's the drawback, but their opponents are still averaging 2.17, and Newcastle have had 2 cards or more in their last 5 games at the Etihad, an average of 3.4. So again, you'd expect Newcastle to pick up 2 or 3 cards here, and both teams to score looks really, really good, given just how weak City are defensively, but it's still dangerous going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Struggling to keep clean sheets, aren't they, at home, Scott? They've kept 2 clean sheets all season at home in the Premier League, which by their standards of the last couple of years is staggering, really, isn't it? It's complete night and day to what we've seen for the past 4 years. So looking at the match a bit more specifically and bring it into Sam's bet, you said you're expecting both teams to score. Are you expecting, and the City are still finding the net with a good with a good regularity? Like, are you expecting City to win the match, or do you think Newcastle can spring it up, sir?
I think a draw is most likely a score draw. I can see. It is sort of a pick-me match, and it's a very difficult one to call. But I wouldn't be surprised to see something like 2-2 here, like the Merseyside derby last night. It's got that sort of feel to it, and I do think there'll be high intensity, a little bit of chaos, and Newcastle have just done very badly here in recent years. So this is an opportunity to put that to bed, really.
Yeah, Sam, bring in, speaking about Newcastle a little bit more specifically. Okay, City have got their big game coming up. Newcastle have got such an important run of fixtures for their ambitions. After travelling to the Etihad, they faced Nottingham Forest, and then after that they travelled to Liverpool all before the end of the month. Are you expecting Eddie Howe to maybe have one eye on some of those fixtures?
Yeah, probably. But the thing is with this squad, Dan, it's a really, really small squad. So in terms of getting like different personnel in and making that 11 looking too much different, I don't think he can afford to do that anyway. So we're likely going to see a similar lineup to what we have in the last few games. And yeah, I echo what Scott was saying. This is a really tough one, and you could make a good case for a City win, a draw, or a Newcastle win. So in terms of the handicap, to be getting 2 results on side, it just looks like the way to play this. And I think I'm probably just going to keep opposing Manchester City over the coming month, especially, well, we've said it a few times on this pod, City's stretch of opponents from PSG at the end of January all the way to Forest and Brighton in March, just after playing Plymouth Argyle. It's a really tough run of games, and it is one that will zap the energy stores. So yeah, it's an uncomfortable position backing against Manchester City at the Etihad, but I just think we need to keep reminding ourselves that this is not the all-conquering City that we're used to. And if you can get a favourable looking handicap over the next few games in the City games, then maybe that's the way to play it. What is really interesting as well, the upcoming Liverpool game at the Etihad, City are around 2-1 to win the game. And we've not seen City at those kind of prices for a long, long time in the Premier League. So that is a really interesting betting hate.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes to where they are at the moment. And talking about small squads, City obviously have a slightly bigger squad than Newcastle, but as we saw in midweek, just because a player's playing doesn't mean they're fit. Jack Grealish clearly wasn't fully fit came off. Same for Kanji as well. De Bruyne, as I said, is not looking at his brightly best, is he? So certainly one to keep an eye on. Recapping the bets, Sam's gone from Newcastle plus 0.5 in the Asian handicap line against Manchester City. That's at even money. Sam, you doing one full unit on that?
Yeah, will be, yeah.
And Scott's going for both teams to score in this match and over one card for Newcastle. That's a 1.90. So, Daniele, come in here with your pick, looking at another team towards the top of the table. Liverpool.
It's Liverpool. Liverpool host Wolves, and I'm gonna go for Wolves with an Asian handicap of plus 2.25, which you can have at 170 on bet 365. The big debate after and before Liverpool draw against Everton was whether the fixture pile up, the fixture congestion could have affected their title winning or title chasing season. I think if there is potentially a stumble in the road, it's between now and the end of the month, where they will play 5 Premier League games in the space of only 14 days before the Champions League resumes. So perhaps they might be victim of their own success, obviously, with the fact that they've reached the League Cup final. Now, Liverpool are not in scintillating form, not only because they lost to Plymouth Argyle last week, but because, as predicted, they have slowed down. Looking back at Betsy's prediction, this will be one of the lowest Premier League seasons in terms of points tally to win the Premier League. Liverpool are now projected to reach only 85.9 points, which is less than what Leicester had when they won the title in 2016. And I think in that scenario, and considering also the fixture pressure, it is worth going against Liverpool for the time being. There could be a slip, maybe not enough for Arsenal to catch them, considering also their issues with the lack of strikers. But take into consideration that from the 29th December onwards, Liverpool have played 12 games, Wolverhampton have only played 7 games, and I think this could be a trap. Maybe Liverpool wins this easily, wins it by 2-0, 3-1, but that means you still win a bet. And I think, yes, that's probably the right time to oppose Liverpool.
Yeah, speaking about fixture congestion is the big story at the moment, Daniele, isn't it? We talked about Liverpool's upcoming games against Newcastle and Manchester City, but said they're playing Aston Villa as well. It's a really, really tricky time for them. So looking at Liverpool's form, I think recently you can see a really real big difference between their home form and their away form. So I think I spoke about it on the pod last week, but with that 2-2 draw at Goodison Park last night, Liverpool have now won just 2 of their last 7 away matches in all competitions after going down to the mighty Plymouth Argyle on the weekend as well. But obviously different story at home. They're so strong at Anfield. But are you expecting that away form to maybe creep into the home form? And what do you think the sort of blowout and the repercussions will be, if any, from that Merseyside derby at midweek?
These are games that take away a lot of energy, even if you are the favourites and drop points at the last minute. And I think they do have a repercussion. But also looking at from a points tally total. Look, Liverpool, as we said, are projected to finish with 86 points, which means from now on they could only gain 29 points in the remaining 14 fixtures. That means basically 2 points per game, a win and a draw. But last season, Arsenal, the last 14 matches of the campaign, they had 12 wins, 1 draw, and 1 defeat. That would put, if replicated, Arsenal on 87 points right at the end of the season, considering also they'll have to go and play Liverpool at Anfield in early May. And this is probably, if they get there within touching distance, all Arsenal needs to do really is to cut a 4 points deficit. If they go to Anfield with -3, the race is on. A win, and it's up for grabs again, as it was back in the days with a famous win at Anfield for Arsenal with Michael Thomas. I mean, it can happen again if it happened once. But I think the pressure really is on Liverpool now, just before the Premier League begins. And Wolves, on the other hand, yes, they are still embroiled in the relegation zone, but I think they got more than enough to get saved. Now, really, is only a three-horse race to avoid relegation, but it looks like the three newly promoted teams will go down. So yeah, I think Wolves looks good for this one. As I said, it could be a bet where they lose 3-1. Both team to score, by the way, pays 190. I think is another one to look out for, considering Liverpool have leaked goal recently. But yeah, plus 2.25 Asian handicap. Lose by 2 goals margin, you still win the bet.
It's worth noting as well, just as we've been talking, I check it through. Liverpool haven't beaten Wolves by 3 goals since 2020, so 10 matches. In that time, Wolves have beaten Liverpool 3-0 once, coincidentally. But I don't see that happening this weekend. But yeah, Liverpool haven't covered this handicap in the last 10 meetings with Wolves. So
yeah, you also have Daniele giving me a bit of hope there as the Arsenal fan. But yeah, let's see. Looking at the relegation battle, I was thinking about this game as well. Maybe the time that we get the kickoff could play into it as well, because obviously this game is coming Sunday afternoon. By that point, all of Wolves' relegation rivals would have played. Arsenal would have played for Liverpool as well. So that's something that could factor in as well. Maybe all of the 3 newly promoted teams currently in the bottom 3 lose their matches, in which case Wolves and Liverpool may just be happy with a 1-0 Liverpool win or something, shake hands, and they can all move on. So, which would play into the bet, I think. So,
yeah, I think is a scenario there, but do not underestimate Wolves. I'll say. I mean, I think they have given top teams a good game so far. So again, and as I mentioned before, Liverpool 12 games since the end of last year. Wolves only 7 games. I've seen what happened to Inter when they played a midweek game at Fiorentina a couple of weeks ago, and they have played much more than Fiorentina recently. They looked a little bit laggy. Okay, it wasn't a away fixture, but again, with a little bit of leverage in this Asian handicap being plus 225, I think it got room for making a profit.
And I wonder as well, obviously, after that Plymouth Argyle loss in the FA Cup, that was a lot of Arne Slot's second and third choice team. I wonder how much he's going to be willing to rest and rotate his key players going forward, because they did not do a job for him. They did not impress against a team which you'd have to say is miles away from your likes of Wolves, etc. So maybe Slot's going to be using a much smaller pool of players, which then obviously, in terms of becoming jaded and not overcoming the bigger handicaps, is maybe something we should take note of. So yeah, maybe Daniele's bang on.
So you're saying back Arsenal for the title? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying back Arsenal for the title, no, especially after that Havertz news. I am intrigued to see what Arteta's going to do up top. I know we mentioned it before on there, but if you line up with Mikel Merino up top, then
big Mikel.
Can I just say, in relation to the Liverpool squad as well, there's something really impressed me yesterday. Conor Bradley was just determined to be booked. From minute 1, you could see he was as he betted himself. It was obvious. I've got to do that in play. McAllister looked pretty keen, and he didn't end up getting a card. But Bradley was just determined, wasn't he? He was like, I'm getting booked today.
Wow. Maybe I want to keep an eye on. Maybe just Merseyside derby things, but yeah, we'll see. Daniele's first pick is Wolves plus 2.25 Asian handicap market against Liverpool. That's a 1.70 with 1 full unit on that. Scott, do you want to bring in your second bet?
There's data behind it, but this is definitely one of those that I'm liking the narrative as well. So we've gone for it. We've gone for over 35.5 tackles and over 28.5 throws in Tottenham versus Man United. So obviously, Ange is teetering on the edge. We were kind of unsure if they would pull the trigger this week after they went out of the FA Cup. So they're obviously looking for some fight. And I think that's something that Amarin's been calling for, is a bit more intensity in the United squad. So I think we'll see plenty of tackles. And the tackles usually lead to throw-ins. And obviously, as usual, the bets that I'll bring forward, the data is quite promising as well. But I really just think this could be a bit of a chaotic game again. And that's what we like to see when we're back in props. So there were 46 tackles when these teams met in the EFL Cup. That was back in December now. Tottenham matches, home matches, I would say, are averaging 41.08 tackles, ranking only behind Man United's home matches. So that's above the 35.5 that I'm required for this bet to land here. United made 27 tackles when they met in the league at Old Trafford. Tottenham made just 7, but Bruno got sent off fairly early on, and United just didn't turn up. So Tottenham really weren't making their healthy share. I think it'll be far more split here between the two teams. There were also 34 throws in that recent EFL Cup meeting and 36 throws in the last league meeting at this ground. So the 28.5 line looks low. 32.6 average throws in the last 5 competitive head-to-heads. the red card game was actually the only one where we didn't hit the 29 throws mark. And as I say, two managers calling for more. It really does point towards an enthralling game. I think we'll see a decent amount of goals. Neither team is particularly solid defending. United did shore things up a little bit, but then they sort of regressed against Leicester in that first half. And I just think because Ange is obviously contending with a lot of injuries and he's so unwilling to change, I think that'll override United trying to stable things up here, and we should see a few goals. But focusing on the tackles and the throws, 7 tackles and 43 throws as United progress in the Cup against Leicester. And then 39 tackles and 30 throws as Tottenham were beaten by Villa in the FA Cup. So the most recent games are obviously pointing towards it as well. And it could play out sort of like a cup tie here where, okay, maybe neither team has got nothing to play for in the league, but there's certainly two managers asking for a lot more. Ange's future is definitely up for debate. Amarim's not, but he does need to get a response from his players. So with very little in terms of what they're aiming for in the league at stake, it's just about bragging rights, and I think it could play out like a little bit of a cup tie.
Yeah, it's quite rare for the big slot, the 4:30 slot on Super Sunday, to go to two teams in 13th and 14th at this stage of the season, but it should be a cracking game, Scott. I'm just curious why you went for the props over a goals angle. I mean, the goal line is quite high here at, was it 3.25? Was there any temptation to find that, maybe get both teams to score onside or something just to boost the odds a little bit?
It was purely that. It was purely just the line is a little bit too high, and I've been generally backing United unders in their games recently because they did look to shore things up, but I think this will go against that trend just because of the nature of this game. The goals line looked a little high, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a 3-2 win either way, really. I don't think Tottenham have won a home game in the league since about November, about the 10th of November, about 7 matches. So obviously in step Man United to see if they can sort that out for them, I'd imagine.
4-3 when the sides met in the League Cup back in December, so let's hope it's something similar there on Sunday afternoon. Scott's second pick is over 33.5 tackles and over 28.5 throws in Tottenham versus Man United. That's a 1.70 with one full unit on it. Daniele, over to you for your second pick coming out of Germany.
Yes, this is in Germany. Bundesliga, Freiburg visits St Pauli, newly promoted, and I'm backing the team from the Black Forest with a national handicap 0, which pays well, 207, 1 unit. If they draw, no problem. You get your stake back. But I think, from last week, really, with a lot of cups upsets, the magic of the cup across Europe, I think it teaches us once again, if need be, that the value is on the underdogs. And I had a look at a few underdog bets and a few recommended bets from Betsy this weekend across the 5 major leagues in Europe. And I found this was probably the best one in terms of value. Just to bring it back to the Cups upset, obviously we mentioned Plymouth. There was Queen's Park who knocked Rangers out of the Scottish Cup. Queen's Park from the second tier. And back a week ago, Stade Briochin knocked out Nice out of the League One side out of the French Cup. So we're looking at a treble that would have paid around 3,000 units, so astronomical price. For this one, it's a little bit low. It only pays doubles your stake. But again, I think it's about really backing the underdogs and try to find that value. In this case, Betsy help us a lot. Look, Freiburg are 6th. St Pauli are fairly sure they're going to be safe this season. Their chances of relegation, according to Betsy, are only 3.5%. Freiburg still have a good chance of finishing the top 6, around 20%. And the home side, St Pauli, in this case, are projected to score only 0.89 goals, which is the lowest tally among all the Bundesliga home teams this weekend. The chances of a draw are 31%. So again, if you want to be conservative, you could back the Asian handicap plus 0.25 for the visitors, but maybe be a little bit daring, a bit audacious, and go with the Asian handicap 0. Again, I think Freiburg are a well-established team. They got 2 players in the top 10 for assists this season in Bundesliga. So I think, they're a team that can hurt the newly promoted side.
Yeah, it's quite rare to get the team sort of chasing these European spots at a +0 handicap against a team that Betsy's projecting they'll finish 14th, currently sat in 15th place, I think. Sorry, they're sat in 14th at the moment. So it's quite rare to get such a decent handicap, Danny Elliott. I'm quite surprised at that.
This is because the away form of Freiburg has not been great. They won only 1-0 against Bochum. They were stragglers in the Premier League, lost 4-0 to Stuttgart, lost 5-1 to Leverkusen, lost to Eintracht Frankfurt. But here we're talking about a newly promoted side, St Pauli, that had his own issues. They also lost the manager. Fabian Hutzler went to Brighton. So again, he's a team fighting for salvation. And I think Freiburg has been a good side in the recent years. Participating in a few European competition. I remember being in the Europa League, advancing to the group stage. So I think here is a very good price for this one. Probably one maybe where the line has not been set quite right.
St Pauli's home form is really, really bad as well. They've won 2 of their 10 home matches this season. Holstein Kiel and Union Berlin both are in the relegation battle. Off the top of my head, Union Berlin may even be in the relegation zone now.
Yeah. Always good to get the Betsy seal of approval as well, which Daniele's bet does have, which is Freiburg +0 in the Asian handicap market versus St Pauli. That's a 2.07, 1 full unit on that. Sam, let's finish off with your second pick, which is actually the first game of the weekend, which we probably should have started with, but we're ending with it.
Yes, Friday night, Brighton versus Chelsea. I've gone for Brighton +0.25 Asian handicap. That's at 1.87. They just played Brighton at the Amex at the weekend in the FA Cup, lost 2-1. And from what I saw in that game, I'm not sure they should be favourites. We've got a good idea now, obviously, of where the two teams are at and how they match up to each other. In that game, Chelsea went ahead through, if you can remember, that suspect Cole Palmer goal, which was like a misdirected cross. And then Verbruggen kind of bundled it into the side netting. And then Ruter and a dink from Matoma put Brighton 2-1 up around the hour mark. In front of goal for Chelsea, they were really lacking. There was no real cutting edge. Nicholas Jackson is missing for Chelsea, and he is a polarising figure at the best of times, but he is a focal point, similar to Havertz, actually. Both have their critics, but that component at the top of the pitch to like bounce passes off and someone to hold the ball up and hold on to possession and bring others into play, as well as those run in behind the defenders and on the shoulder of the central defenders, is really important. So he will be missed dearly. And Nkunku started up front for Chelsea in the Cup, and he's not a striker. And not only that, his confidence is shot to pieces compared to how he was operating for Borussia Dortmund before his Premier League move. We know what Brighton can offer going forward, but defensively, I was pretty impressed as well against Chelsea. They allowed 0 big chances. Chelsea had 7 attempts at goal in the whole of the 90 minutes, despite trailing for nearly 40 minutes. And this match came after that 7-0 defeat to Forest as well for Brighton, so that's worth noting. Hutzler moved to a 4-2-3-1, and that nullified Chelsea down the middle, where Hinchelwood and Baleba were in front of the back line, and it provided that back line with additional security. And Baleba back in the squad is transformational to this Brighton side, and that and Brighton locking down either wing through their retreating wingers and also Veltman and Lamptey, who was really good against his former club, that won them the game. But my main concern tomorrow night is that Lewis Dunk might be injured, which means we'll see Adam Webster come in, and I'm not the biggest fan of Webster personally. Well, he's certainly no Lewis Dunk for this Brighton side anyway. But regardless, at the prices, I don't really understand why Brighton are on a plus handicap. I think this should really be 0.0 on the draw no bet line. So because of that, I'm going to take a unit on it and roll the dice. Hopefully Brighton come out on top.
Yeah, interesting game, especially after they met last weekend. Betsy projections for this game give Brighton 1.46 to Chelsea 2.04. So looking like a good one for the neutrals. Goal difference is 0.58 in favour of the visitors. But obviously that doesn't factor in the Jackson injury. So you mentioned that there, Sam. How big of an impact is that going to make? And how do you think Chelsea are going to line up? Do you think Cole Palmer pushed a bit forward, or do you think they'll just stick with Nkunku, move him up and just try and make it work?
I think they'll stick with Nkunku, yeah. And I think it'll be like more of a fluid front line, maybe as like a false nine type thing. But we've seen what we saw at the weekend. It didn't quite work, and they do have the players to be really impactful, especially from the wing. But Hutzler's game plan was to lock down the middle of the pitch, make it really narrow, let them play out wide, and they give Cole Palmer loads of space to get on the ball. they wanted him to get on the ball, and as soon as he got on the ball, their winger retreated, and their fullbacks were right at him, and he didn't really. He had a lot of time and space, but he wasn't really that effective, bar that like ridiculous goal he scored in the first half. So I think we'll see more of the same. And yeah, I think that Nicholas Jackson injury, and I didn't think I'd be saying this because I'm not his biggest fan, but I think they're going to really, really miss him. And this is a game now as well, which is like draped in narrative between the two clubs. Chelsea is Brighton's biggest customer in terms of players bought. Potter and his backroom staff went, Cucurella, Caicedo, Robert Sanchez, all former Brighton lads. And so there's an edge to this game now, and Brighton often step up for it, especially on home soil. And they are typically better against the bigger teams. And at home, I was looking earlier, you'll see that they're the 13th worst home side in the Premier League based on points returned. But only Aston Villa, Liverpool and Arsenal have lost fewer games than Brighton at home. So I think Brighton have only lost 2 games in the whole of the Premier League season at home. And on this plus handicap, if it's a draw, we will get half profit. So it looks a pretty good line. And at the minute, this Chelsea team, they are middle of the road in the Premier League in terms of form. If you look at both the 6-game and the 10-game form table, they're around middle of the table, and it does feel like that. And if this game came at the start of December when they were flying, we were speaking about them on the pod, saying they've got a chance of being right up there for like the Champions League spots. And we said maybe their defence will let them down in the long run. But if this game came at the start of December when they were flying, I could get on board with these prices, but not now for me personally. So Brighton on a plus handicap at 1.87.
Yeah, looks good. They do tend to lift their performances at home, as you say, Sam. Beat Manchester City earlier in the season, beat Tottenham, beat Manchester United as well, got a point against Arsenal. Their only 2 losses, you were right, their only 2 losses came against Everton and Crystal Palace. Yeah, Brighton lift themselves against a big team. Wouldn't be the first time we've seen it this campaign. Sam's second bet is Brighton plus 0.25 in the Asian handicap market against Chelsea. So 1.87. That's the Friday night game. So if you do want to back it, get on it quickly. Moving on to the pod treble and a bit of a mixed bag in midweek. The City bet came in over 3 goals shots. Just on the shot line in Sporting versus Dortmund was a little bit off, and then a half push in Club Brugge versus Atalanta for the under.
Have you seen the penalty? Have you seen the penalty?
I didn't watch the highlights.
Last minute,
actually.
Last minute.
I tell you that Turkish referee, Dutch VAR. That's the receipt for a disaster. You can change it. Even Dutch VAR, Dutch referee. It's not football anymore. I'm sorry.
That's very specific. So I want to know: is there a relation to Inter here? Did something happen?
No. But there is a lot of relationship with Italian clubs, especially with Dutch referees, with Roman clubs in the past, and Turkish referees. I mean, Çekir is a name that still sends shivers across Europe. I remember a few mistakes. And, it's strange because what happened in Turkey, in the Turkey League over the weekend with the game of Galatasaray suspended, no? Because the team walked off the pitch, and what UEFA does, Bruges Atalanta sends a Turkish referee who gives a penalty for a suspected hand in the face of Nilsson, who then doesn't cover himself in glory, just going down as if, I mean, it's really ridiculous. But I think Atalanta will turn this over, by the way, in the second leg. But he lost us the bet after all.
We'll discuss this next week. I think it was losing anyway, Daniele. We're all good, mate. We're all
good.
It doesn't sound bitter at all, though.
No.
It's all good.
I wasn't expecting just so much passion, and now that's quite good. It's great.
Let's get on with this week's pod treble. Daniele, on that note, do you want to kick us off with your selection?
Say hi to all the friends from Turkey. I'm from the Netherlands. Not also the ones who are refereeing. Monza is an handicap plus 0.25 against Lecce at home, and you think I have gone completely crazy because I'm backing the team at the bottom of the table against Lecce, a team that has sacked the manager they hired to hire again the manager they sacked before. Basically, Alessandro Nesta is back in charge at Monza, the last roll of the dice for a team that is been depleted, is been stripped down in the January transfer market. But the silver lining, actually there are 2 silver linings. One, that this season in Serie A, there's been a very clear new manager bounce with all the teams that have changed the manager. So maybe it could happen to Monza the second time around as well. But also, the other silver lining is that based on expected goals stat, Monza should be ahead of Lecce, and actually Lecce should be bottom of the table. So perhaps that's why Monza are given a little bit of trust, but looking also at Betsy thinks that Lecce only have 25% chances of winning. Therefore, if you back Monza with an Asian handicap plus 0.25, a sort of decaf Asian double chance, you can win if they draw, but not full strength coffee, if you like.
The best
Decaf
way of
Asian
describing Asian handicap I've ever
But
heard.
it's reduced, though, because it is an X2, is a 1X, but with anyway.
This, I wouldn't say it's full decaf. Like, this is going to go off topic, but sometimes when I make a coffee, I'll do like a half calf. So I'll do like half caffeinated and half decaf, which is
Right.
kind of like it's kind of like a quarter of a goal.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
know?
That's the.
Is there like an intern, like the Italian in you? Is it screaming? And no, that's okay.
No,
Okay.
I've used that before.
Okay. I know that the Italians are very proud of their.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything
yeah.
goes back to coffee for Daddy.
Yeah, always good.
Dan, why would you do half decaf, half coffee? Is it time of day? Was
Yeah,
it where you're feeling?
Mate,
or-
I've got a whole system. I don't think we've got the time on the pod for me to talk about my system.
That's
but
for another
it's
pod.
based
then.
on like
Maybe
yeah,
for next week.
yeah, no. I'll do a standalone episode special
Right.
before the end of the season.
No.
Very complicated. Sam, do you want to give us your pick for the pod trouble?
Yes, Bournemouth -1 Asian handicap at 1.92. So I bet on Bournemouth straight win at 1.72 a few weeks ago. Biggest bet of the season in this game. It's now moved to 1.53, but I still think there's juice in that for me. Enough to include it in this pod treble anyway. Newcastle went to Southampton at 1.44 in January. Chelsea at 1.3. Liverpool at 1.33. And for me, I'd have Bournemouth priced on a -1.25 Asian handicap here instead of the current -1 line, which means our stake will be returned at a minimum if Bournemouth get a victory in Southampton. This is a top 3 Premier League outfit, according to the underlying data. They are right now one of the best teams in the country, maybe second best behind Liverpool in terms of performance. They battered Nottingham Forest, they battered Newcastle. Their only defeat in the last 15 games was against Liverpool. Looking at the home team, this is Southampton are statistically one of the worst teams we've ever seen at the level. Their 54 goals conceded after 24 games is the 4th worst return in the Premier League era, behind West Brom, Barnsley and Sheffield United last season, who conceded 60 goals. And Betsy projects that this meeting will be the highest scoring fixture of matchday 25, with a total XG of 3.57. And if that's the case, and this meeting becomes open and we see goals like the 3-1 reverse meeting in September, then Bournemouth are going to outscore Southampton for me. And Betsy also predicts that Southampton will finish bottom of the league with a projected points tally of 20, which means they'll pick up around 11 more points in the remaining 16 matches. And I doubt this will be one of the games which they claw points from. So Bournemouth -1 Asian handicap at 1.92.
Yeah, again, this shows the value of betting early, Sam. I remember you speaking about this last week when the lines came out. Like, I got on them at 1.7, so like just shows how much that line has come in. Would you be looking at them? Bit off topic here, maybe add it as a little addendum to the pod, but they're you can get them to beat Wolves next week at 1.61. Is there any temptation for that?
Are they away from home?
They are at home.
They are at home. Yeah, it's a good price.
While we're
not
on the
that price,
subject
is it?
of early betting and Wolves, I think they've got Wolves in the FA Cup, haven't they? And you look at who they could draw. Like, you'd fancy them to beat Man United. They'd probably beat City. They wouldn't want to go to the Etihad, but if they avoid that draw, you can see them in the final. There's nobody there you'd be scared of.
I'm writing something out at the minute for Betting Expert, and it's all centered around Bournemouth to win the FA Cup, because looking at the list of teams, they're the best team left in the competition on terms of, and that might be a bit outlandish for some, but in terms of current performance, they're the best team still left in the FA Cup, and they're 10-1 to win it. Got City at 2.75, which I'd go nowhere near. Newcastle at 5-1, Villa at 7-1, United 4 favourites somehow in front of Bournemouth. Yeah, that Bournemouth price It's pretty good.
Yeah, surely we don't see another Manchester Derby FA Cup final where they've both just been awful this season.
I can't see it.
Surely
Can't
not.
see it.
No, surely not. Getting back to the topic at hand, Sam's pod treble selection is Bournemouth -1 Asian handicap versus Southampton. That's a 1.92. Yeah, you're also backing that with a full unit, Sam, as a single.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, it's coming a bit, but I still like it.
Okay, good stuff. And Scott, please give us your selection.
So I'm going both teams to score in Palace versus Everton. Now, I backed this as part of the treble in Moyes' first game against Villa, and Calvert-Lewin missed an open goal in the final minutes of the game, maybe even like the last kick of the game. I'm not quite over it, but I'm going back in here. I think both teams to score just lands, to be honest. I'm battling with Betty on this one. Betty's got this down as the lowest scoring game of the weekend, but things have changed under Moyes, and obviously Betty's taken into account longer term data, because what sort of a model would it be if it didn't? But I just think we'll see plenty of goals here. Everton created plenty of chances, I'm sure you'll agree, against Liverpool. Not a huge amount, but they had 37% possession. They're pretty good value for the 2 goals when they looked okay. Beto's expertly timed finish for the goal, the first goal, was really impressive. Everton is a team that's just lacked composure in front of the goal. They seem to have got something in recent weeks. They're averaging 2 goals per Premier League game under Moyes and conceding 1. So I just think we'll see Everton go out there again. I know, obviously, the schedule has been pretty grueling for them with the rescheduled game against Liverpool. They've got a growing injury list, but they are just running off vibes under David Moyes at the moment, so I really just think they'll score. Palace have scored in their last 7 home games across all competitions, and both teams to score has landed in their last 6 Premier League games at Selhurst Park. Both teams to score also landed in the reverse fixture, and obviously Everton were a lot less dangerous back then. And Everton won their last league outing at Selhurst Park 3-2, so all signs point to goals, and even money's a pretty good price.
It was a great goal from Beto.
It was just
Really took
awesome.
it well.
Like the fin I didn't think he had in his locker. When he went through, I was like, he's missing
Yeah,
that.
no chance.
There's
Yeah.
no. And it's
It was his run as well. That was probably just as impressive.
he let it come across his body really well, and just
Yeah.
but it was really good.
Just seeing that.
Everton deserved the draw last night. I know Liverpool did quite well, and they met the intensity, and then Salah come up with the magic again, and I think a draw was a fair result, to be honest with you.
It looks like Decore and Dye are gonna miss this one though.
Yeah, and he'll be out for a while. I just purely think because of the vibes. I think whoever's in that Everton attack at the moment, they are going for it, aren't they?
Well, if they need a goal, they can just stick Tarkovsky up front and he can leather in another volley. So
Some finish that.
we'll
Bloody
see.
hell.
It
We'll
was.
see.
It was ridiculous.
That rounds off Scott's selection for the pod treble. If you put all of those together, you'll get odds of 6.07, which we will be tracking with a quarter of a unit. Let's recap the bet. Starting with the single, starting with you, Sam.
Yes. What did I do? Brighton plus 0.25 Asian handicap at 1.87 for a unit. Newcastle plus 0.5 Asian handicap at evens for a unit. Away at Manchester City, and also Bournemouth -1 Asian handicap, at 1.92 for a unit.
And Scott.
I've gone both teams to score and over 1 card for Newcastle in Manchester City versus Newcastle. That's at 1.91 unit on that. And then Tottenham versus Man United, over 35.5 tackles and over 28.5 throws at 1.7, also a unit.
And Daniele.
Wolverhampton Asian handicap plus 2.25 as they visit the leaders Liverpool at 170, and Freiburg Asian handicap 0 in the Bundesliga against St Pauli 207, both 1 unit.
And for the pod treble, Sam has gone for this Bournemouth -1 versus Southampton, as he said, for his single. Scott's gone for both teams to score in Crystal Palace versus Everton, and Daniele has gone for Monza plus 0.25 in the Asian handicap market against Lecce. Put all those bets together into a treble, you get odds of 6.07, which we will be backing with a quarter of a unit. If you are going to be using any of the bets from today's show, then please gamble responsibly, only betting what you can afford to lose. Thank you, as ever, to Sam Ingram.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott Thornton.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniele Fischard.
Thank you.
And thanks from me. We'll be back next week.